Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. It opens with a staff member of a mental hospital meeting with a wealthy paraplegic. The disfigured Mason Verger inquires about a former patient named Hannibal Lecter and his relationship with the FBI agent Clarice Starling. Barney says that she was the only person that Lecter would ever speak to and produces a box containing the mask worn during his captivity. The avid collector pays $250,000 to obtain it and wear around his mansion just for the fun of it. Elsewhere, Starling leads a raid on a dealer named Ivelda who uses her HIV as a weapon and bites at the police when she feels threatened. Although Starling's planned the arrest precisely, one agent draws his gun, getting him noticed by Ivelda's henchman and shot dead. A wild shootout begins in which the gang attempts to flee in a car, running another officer down. The driver's shot and they crash as Starling orders her team to stand down because Ivelda exits carrying her child in front of her, but whips out a gun, shooting Starling, who retaliates with a precise shot, narrowly missing the baby. After hosing off the blood-splattered infant, Clarice recovers as she was wearing a bulletproof vest. She gets reprimanded by Justice Department official Paul Krendler as the pictures of her shooting a mother holding her child doesn't look good to the press. He's made romantic advances towards Starling for years, but she always rejects him, so he's happy about her downfall. But Mason sees the shootout on the news and learns about Clarice's relationship with Hannibal Lecter. He uses his political influence and has Starling's hearing thrown out and requests to meet with her at his estate with new information to catch Lecter. We learn that Mason's the fourth victim of the cannibalistic killer and the only person to ever survive out of the 14. His personal physician Cordell introduces him to Clarice, who's told about his history with Lecter. Mason was convicted of criminal acts with children and matched up with the therapist for treatment. One night he invited the persuasive Dr. Lecter to his house, who proceeded to convince Mason to feed his own face to his dog and strangle himself into a wheelchair. He's angry about the FBI removing Hannibal from the most wanted list and requests verification of an X-ray that he purchased from Barney. In Florence, Italy, Chief Inspector Rinaldo Pazzi is investigating the disappearance of the library's curator. The new curator Hannibal Lecter goes by the moniker of Dr. Fell and claims to have no knowledge of his predecessor's whereabouts. He soon learns of Starling's public disgrace and sends her a letter asking if his return to the FBI's top 10 list means she's been reassigned to his case. Clarice takes the letter to the lab to find clues to Lecter's whereabouts and smells a fragrance that perfume experts say could have only been sold in a few shops in the world, one of which is in Florence. So Starling contacts the police and has Pazzi's department check surveillance tapes of the cameras installed in all of the perfume shops. After a few hours, Rinaldo recognizes Hannibal in one of the tapes and thinks that maybe Dr. Fell isn't telling him the complete truth. He decides to find out why the feds are interested in him by first trying to obtain a fingerprint, but the serial killer is too thorough with covering his tracks. Pazzi then accesses the FBI's database and learns that Fell's a wanted fugitive with a $3 million reward from Mason for information. He spends the night learning about the crimes of Hannibal Lecter before contacting the number on the website and agreeing to help in the capture, but Verger's people offer him a $100,000 advance if he can obtain a fingerprint of the doctor. So Pazzi visits Lecter's residence trying to obtain anything he can with a print on it, but the doctor doesn't let him out of his sight. He tells the story of Pazzi's ancestor who was hung for murder 5 centuries ago and thrown from a balcony. Rinaldo says that no one even remembers the story anymore, but Lecter puts it in his head that maybe his ancestor's crimes are why the police never promote him. He does everything else with gloves on in the house, so Pazzi's left to find another way to obtain the print. He coerces a local pickpocket into wearing an easily smudged bracelet and trying to rob Lecter, knowing that Lecter will catch the thief's wrist but not expecting him to sever the man's femoral artery. Pazzi obtains the bracelet containing the fingerprint but leaves the pickpocket to bleed out in the street. When Verger confirms the prints as Lecter's, he pays Rinaldo in full and calls Carlo in Sardinia to offer him a job. He plans to capture Hannibal as part of an elaborate revenge scheme of torturing and killing him personally. Carlo's an expert at swine breeding and has prepared boars that have been conditioned to attack their victim when they scream. That night, Pazzi's attractive wife attends the opera with her nervous husband who's trying to hide his intentions from Lecter. After the event, the doctor meets Allegra and reads to her poetry enough to make Rinaldo uncomfortable. He ferries his wife away from the cannibalistic Casanova and returns to the office where he receives a call from Starling. She's finally received the surveillance tape from Florence and recognized Lecter as her man. She warns Pazzi against trying to capture Lecter by himself, but he's already come this far and wants the man out of his life. He conspires with Verger's men to kidnap Lecter after his scheduled lecture on the poetry of Dante. It narrates the tale of Pazzi's ancestor and his similarities to Judas Iscariot while receiving a standing ovation from the scholars attending. When everyone else leaves, Lecter reveals to Pazzi that they're standing in the very same 15th century building that his ancestor was hung from. He threatens to eat Allegra, then subdues the officer with chloroform who forgot to bring his weapon when Starling distracted him. When Pazzi regains consciousness, he's tied to a trolley and being wheeled over to the window for a realistic reenactment. He admits that it's Mason's men waiting outside when Clarice calls to be greeted by her old rival. Lecter says that the perfume on his letter was intended to draw Starling to him, then hangs up on her and returns to the execution. Just like Judas, Pazzi's gutted, then hung from the upper floor balcony with his intestines spilling out into the street. Frustrated by the failed attempt to kidnap Lecter, Verger tries to draw him out of hiding by having Cordell deliver Krendler $500,000 to plant stolen evidence at Starling's house. She's suspended, but not before voicing her concerns that Mason's trying to kill Lecter and Krendler's framed her. It works, and an angry Lecter returns to America to terrify Krendler's dog when breaking into his house, learning about his lakefront property and preparing a dinner inside the empty holiday home. He then pays a silent visit to Starling, before stealing surgical equipment from a hospital and contacting Clarice to meet him at Union Station. She's followed by Carlo all the way from home, seeking revenge for his little brother, who was killed by Lecter when he escaped their ambush in Florence. Starling talks to Lecter on the phone, who says how disgusting Mason's crimes were and how he deserved his punishment like the rest of them. Which is what Barney told her, that Hannibal prefers to eat criminals, or at the very least someone that's rude. Lecter gets close enough to reach out and touch Starling's hair while saying that he might force the people who have disrespected her at the FBI to scream apologies. He's noticed by Verger's men, who follow him outside and capture him in the station's parking lot. Starling tries to stop them, but Carlo manages to escape and transport his captive to Mason's estate for torture. He lays out his plan to eat Lecter's feet, then feed his body to his herd of pigs that Carlo's brought over from Italy. When he questions why Hannibal didn't kill him like all of the others, Lecter responds that he prefers him just the way he is now. The FBI refused to help on Starling's suspicion that Mason's kidnapped Lecter, so she goes to the Verger estate alone. Carlo and his family are holding Hannibal in the barn to await Mason's arrival as Lecter mocks the Italian's dead brother to his face. Starling intervenes by shooting Carlo dead and handcuffing his accomplice, but while releasing Hannibal, a third henchman trades bullets, leaving her wounded on the floor. Lecter escapes and rescues his savior from the emerging swarm of pigs who eat their screaming owners just as Mason arrives. When he sees the carnage and orders Cordell to shoot Lecter, Hannibal persuades the physician to push his boss into the pen and he'll take the blame for it. So Cordell does it, as he's never liked Mason anyway, and the kitty diddler dies in the same way he planned to kill Lecter. Hannibal takes Starling to Krendler's lakefront house and keeps her sedated while treating her bullet wound. When the owner comes home, he's ambushed by the intruder and put under, while Starling wakes upstairs dressed for a formal occasion. She stumbles out of the room still feeling the effects of the chloroform and calls the police, which Hannibal lets her do, as they'll still have 10 minutes until they reach them. Contrast to leaving the house like they say, she searches for Lecter downstairs and finds him in the dining room preparing their dinner. Krendler's doped up on morphine and Starling's made to sit with them, before taking a swing at the doctor with a butter knife, but she's too weak to put up a fight. She's made to watch on, mortified, as Lecter removes the top of Krendler's skull and the part of his brain that's associated with good manners. He sautés it in a pan with butter and herbs, then feeds it to its owner while Starling pleads with him to quit. Lecter then has Krendler admit that the suits and the bureau are never going to promote Starling, as he's wheeled away to the kitchen. When she's recovered some more, Starling attacks Lecter with a candlestick but is still easily overpowered. He traps her ponytail in the fridge and breaks the handle off before asking Clarice if she'll ever stop chasing him. She replies not in 1,000 years, which is exactly what Lecter wanted to hear, and says that's my girl. Before he escapes, Hannibal kisses Clarice Starling when hearing the click of her handcuffs as she connects their wrists. When she refuses to provide the key, Lecter brandishes a meat cleaver and asks if she'd like it above or below the wrist, then slams the cleaver down as the camera fades to black. As it returns, Starling's looking for Lecter when police cars arrive, as she identifies herself with both hands still attached. The last scene shows Lecter on an airplane, having removed his own hand to escape instead of Starling's. He's prepared and brought his own dinner with him when a small boy asks if he can try some of the foreign meat. Lecter's mother always told him to try new things, so he feeds the stranger a piece of Krendler's brain. And the movie ends.